This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, happy new month. It is the very first day of February 2023. Well, new plans. I can't say new people because usually we are around the same circles. But hey, if you're bound to meet new people, clearly good for you. New blessings this month. And here on Good Morning Uganda, we are very excited to be able to start off this new month. And of course, my name is Philomena Mastiko. I am with the Mollen, Kenyena. I do have Felix Nkunda. I do have Robert, Kirabo, Nyonyintono, all of us starting off this morning. But I must say that this month is starting off on a very, very, very hot note. Right from Parliament, we did see the probe into the allegations about NSSF operation challenges come through, and there are very many things that came to light. It left me shaking my head. Illegalities when it comes to the board. Apparently some board members actually appointed themselves. How that happened, clearly we are meant to find out. But also all these companies and organizations that actually deduct money from their employees and don't remit them to NSSF. What's going on? What's happening? We have to also look into all of that, but it's quite interesting, quite hot for a couple of people, and I can't wait to see where these investigations are going to end. But also going all the way to the shortage of medical supplies that is happening in all these public health facilities. Well, National Medical Stores has something to say, and clearly it seems the Ministry of Finance has to release that money immediately to make sure that we deal with all these shortages. So I must say there is quite a lot that we're going to be dealing with the country, especially when it comes to this month of February, at least from what I'm seeing. But first things first. Good morning, Mollen. Happy new month.
A very good morning to you. It is indeed a happy month. It is a month of love, and I'm taking it upon myself, especially for the gentlemen we have on the set, to teach them what February is all about.
Yes.
And bring back that mood. Philomena, you'll have to help me on that. We do have one person here who doesn't really believe in this month, and that is Felix Nkunda, but we're going to take it upon ourselves and extend that kind of excitement to him.
For a gentleman called Nkunda.
I know, right? The name itself talks about love. How do you not recognize February as a month of love? And I think it's not just about Valentine's, but the entire month is just a good one. First of all, it doesn't even have enough days like the rest of the month.
I knew Mollen not to be happy about that.
Exactly, it's a confusing month. Something about it should be special, and I think that's where we are. But in the spirit of excitement, yesterday I was watching the CHAN semi-finals, and I'm like, okay, what is different, especially the game between Algeria and Niger, where Algeria came out with 5-0. I looked at the way Niger was playing, I'm like, okay, maybe even Uganda Cranes would be better. But then again, Uganda Cranes was left right at a very early stage. Sometimes it's hard to defend Uganda Cranes. I don't know whether they realize how much Ugandans get hurt whenever they lose tournaments like that. If you would have seen the day they won a match, and there was a watch party, every Ugandan felt proud. That lasted for a day, only for Uganda Cranes to lose the next day. And after that, I think a lot of people even stopped watching CHAN. I'll ask you how many people did watch even the semi-finals, or who knows, whoever is in the finals now. But tell you what, we also had a game for Senegal against Madagascar, where Senegal came out with 1-0. So now we have finally Senegal and Algeria. But also you see that Algeria has been lucky coming from the group stages. They were winning quite slowly, but sure, exactly how they got into the semi-finals, and now we are there. And I think at this point, you also have to give it to the fact that this has been specifically African football. And you look at the guys the lads that have been playing back home. I think there's a lot that we could have learned as Ugandan football. I do hope that the coaches were watching. I do hope that, the scouts, whoever was watching this tournament, could have noticed one thing or two that we could pick. For example, I was watching the way Niger was playing, and it looked like everyone was off their game. They didn't have it together, right from the goalkeeping. Everything was just so. I would want to borrow President Magogo's word. What he used on Uganda Cranes sometimes. That was shitty football that we were seeing right there. And I was like, okay, these guys, how did they even get into the semi-finals? But there is a lot that we can do in Africa as African football and make sure that we can compete. You look at such football, even if there are scouts, looking at it from the outside angle, from Europe, they cannot get anyone from that team. The way you play out there, you're representing the entire continent, and you just go and do stuff like that.
Well, I want to believe that there is room for improvement. The other day I saw a story in the New Vision, and they were actually asking if the Uganda Cranes coach will be able to sort the mess that is in Uganda Cranes. So maybe we should start from there, and when we sort those issues, probably we'll look at our, our football players.
There's a section of Ugandans actually that are suggesting if we could have local coaches alone. Because fine, we've had these coaches here, the international coaches, we're giving them a lot of money, but what are they bringing? We never get past the group stages in any tournament.
Felix,
so I think we need to also get back to that line and see whether local coaches could actually perform much better.
Felix, the local coaches, what do you think about them? Good morning.
Uganda Cranes, and then Magogo comes out and says they played good football. She didn't know about who's fooling who now. After the team is lost here, I'm not there actually. The man is Sebastian Sabre. What is his name? That's the coach, Micho. Who?
Micho, I failed to pronounce that other name. Yes.
Then he says, I think he did a good job. The team did a good performance. So what about the ones at the final? What do you say about them?
It's very evident.
As Mollen said,
yes.
I wish Uganda Cranes knew the power they hold in terms of putting this country together. The way everything, you see, some of us have supported soccer for the last about 15 years, 20 years. We know what good soccer is. That's why when I think Uganda was playing a game that day, and there was Manchester and Arsenal, that same Saturday, if I'm not wrong. Just people were out there even demonstrating the happiness, like even guys who were arrested in Jinja. I think Jinja was somewhere.
Yes, it was in Jinja.
All that should show you people that you need to do a lot about Ugandan sports. Yesterday, another report came out. You saw that clip that's trending on social media about the netball and how they want them to account for wrong. That whole of that mix of all those things make us hate your sports in Uganda.
The one
And
thing,
that's
honestly,
why
that should be
we
bringing
shall-
us together is sports.
Those are some of the few
soccer,
things,
yes.
things like music, culture, sports. But the people in sports are funny in their own way. They are arrogant. They are not tebagambwako. They are
They're not taking it serious.
like, that's the thing. Actually, that's the right word. They are just there for the little they know, not even much they know.
Or to show
So,
face.
See, Bidia, now no one is interested. Talk about Uganda Cranes, who even cares? That's why people will run to the Chelseas, the Arsenals, and you can't blame them. Then after you come talking about patriotism,
Well,
where is your patriotism?
and I
You
did
people who are
see
in charge of the
one
sports?
person on Twitter talking about if we gave the same attention and concentration on the international football, if we brought that kind of love and put it on our Ugandan teams, then
Now we have
probably-
shown
Yeah,
love.
that will be a heartbreak.
Robert.
Next time
Honestly,
will
we have
last
shown,
2 minutes.
if you remember Nambole times,
Yes,
remember when
yeah.
I think Uganda was playing, there's a game of Kenya, that one, there was a game, man,
There was one against Togo.
Togo,
where
Ugandans,
brought it up.
I remember even they blocked roads to Nambole.
Yes.
Now, Nambole, Teddy, what? Like, the soccer is,
We are
there's no
dealing
love.
with heartbroken Ugandans when it comes
like
to
one of the musicians,
our own football
there's
team.
a gentleman called Matovu, who is a Afrigo, I think
The
what-
saxophonist, I
yeah,
think.
my man
Yes.
Matovu. Some of us call him Papa Moy. But I remember one time I was saying, maybe you remember that video when he was saying,
Robert, good morning. Good morning, Robert. Happy New Month.
Happy New Month. Good morning to you, colleagues. Good morning, Ugandans. Thank you so much for waking up with us. Well, may I begin with some good news. This morning I was able to move on Kampala flyover.
Okay.
At least a bit of it, where I was coming that side of Nsambia. When you reach the Arena Mall, from there there's a diversion. You have a feel of the Kampala flyover up to around Mukwano Industries here. Though it was a sudden change, you know, you're somehow late, you're rushing, you're driving very fast, and you just can't connect very well. But later I saw the guidelines and some road furniture there directing where I should take. So it felt so good. At least I've begun February by testing a feel of that.
Can we say you've unofficially launched it?
Well, I'm not an
Kirabo
authority.
could have been on that road illegally.
Maybe.
And I'm wondering why even
And
he's
he's
saying it on
putting himself on
TV.
national TV. Okay.
The traffic comes for you, Kirabo.
No, I'm very sure I wasn't
You're
there.
right.
I wasn't there illegally, but on behalf of Ugandans, I can launch that section from the traffic lights of.
Why are you launching that section?
are going to drive that
That's not in your
side,
power.
No, because for now you can use it. In case it is illegal, of course they'll put bulkheads there. But for now they have opened it.
What
It's,
Robert you can say? You can use it if you're caught. You're caught.
You're on your own.
You're on your own.
I may never put people in harm's way. If you're caught, give me a call. You can go to my Twitter handle, then we can see how best we can do that. But at least I felt, okay, that is something. Me and Ugandan football, I must be very honest. There is so much if you want to change soccer in this country. Right from what we give our players, leave alone talking about patriotism. You know, in this country, we talk about patriotism when we want others to be patriotic, not us. You know, when people are getting peanuts, then you bring in patriotism. People who did this didn't do it for money. People, you know, when you go to these boys when they are training, some are eating sugar canes. You know, when you look at some of these boys that play on our national team, what do they have? What do they earn? You get it? So then when you go to those that are managing the soccer, oh my God, where they're supposed to give this amount, they give this amount.
Yeah,
you know?
So at the end of the day, and me, I will not look at the players only, because I know the players, if you listen to their honest stories, because even some fear with their bosses. We've seen these things happen in Ugandan soccer. You're giving out
And
some
you know, it's not just
clarification.
only soccer, even
Yes.
rugby.
So-
It's crazy.
All sports
All
generally.
sports
That is a
actually.
problem. And for me with football, Felix, I know how Uganda wins. You get a calculator, then you begin. Then you begin, oh no, this is how we do. ono bwakuba ono tuyitawo oli bwakuba oli
This time we
ono
didn't even
bwakuba
get to the
nono nakuba
calculating part.
and this time we didn't even
We didn't need
We
to
didn't
calculate.
to get our
That
calculators.
benefit
We're
of
knocked
Dr.
out.
Real
we
Hope was
didn't get the
because
calculating part.
Yes, because Ruben here begins. Now, if Niger beats this one, then this one loses, and this one, then for us,
when it rains,
Then for us- that is where we end up. And you know what happens? It seems we always get 9 if it is a mathematics paper. Oli takubo, oli no nata kubibuo, no oli nate wayo, oli amukube. And finally we are out. But this time we didn't even.
Sega South Africa to come in a good. I'm like,
Yeah.
why didn't you win your own?
Where did mathematics and the prayers? You hear someone, and I love these football commentators on local radio. Katwana wetuli, singa, Kenya, Kuba.
But you see that is even how we're losing players.
Eno newangula awo tuba tuyingira ekifo ekyokusatu musabe nnyo
kusamba.
That's how we are losing players. If you remember even how we lost, I think, the likes of Onyango, early retirement from Uganda
Yeah, but,
Cranes.
even
It was the same
Boas.
story. Yeah.
Sometimes
They can't put up with what is happening in Uganda.
sometimes also our love gets exhausted. You people in sports.
so
we
it's
have
not that
No,
we
it's not
haven't
like-
showed
yeah, it's
support and we
And
haven't
also
been
sometimes what
patriotic.
happens is, even when you're watching, I must say I've not watched so much this tournament. It's like sometimes we're like, Manya bana wataba go bembata. When you're used to watching Premier and even the soccer, there's something I don't know.
Maybe I think we could
from watching the
blame it.
likes of the Sakas, the Odegaards, then you come to.
I think there's lack of motivation in Ugandan football, and that's why you see even the ones that are already on the international teams.
They don't even want
they
to
are
be
yeah,
part
they
of.
can't be home. Some of them
Because
are
if you have
actually
people like
called to
Ibrahim
get back,
Sekaja,
and they don't
he's
even
there
get
in
back.
America, he's almost one of the top coaches in, I think, Bulls or something. But you're here struggling. Yeah, you don't know what's the name of the coach? I saw the man doing an advert. Dance. I've never seen that anywhere.
No, and these days they have a campaign, and by the way, I think Ugandans, in the love of it, while we talk about how we motivate the Uganda Cranes, they also have a way. Talking about Uganda Cranes,
Anyway.
they are calling on every Ugandan to
Anyway.
support.
We are not saying we are not patriotic. Yeah, we
But-
love our country.
Yes, but there is a
But
breaking
sometimes
point.
we must speak facts.
Yes.
If you're to change, for us who grew up in the village, Felix, these things knows them very well.
The villager.
We grew up in Rubaga Balist. There's what we call a jute. Felix, a jute in English.
Yeah,
I'm Rusungu jute.
duty.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So, those days, kids would get those things, they were common. Yeah? But if the kid kept quiet at home and never spoke that I have a duty, then there used to be a man on the village called Serukamarama Yute. This man, because by then he would come, they give him a piece of cloth, there is hot water, he gets to that area. Then bringing pass out of it, it was very painful. The kid will scream. It wasn't these modern days where they first inject you, you don't feel the pain. No! But at the end of the day, you would heal.
You heal. So that is
After
what
that
we need to
process,
do.
You feel peace because
Yes.
the pain that comes with it's just like sometimes a balm or what's called something. But honestly, what Robert is saying, I think, works directly into what we need to do. I feel that there's been a lot of neglect towards sports in this country. Like Ugandans have got to a point where, like, you know what? Do whatever you want.
They've come to terms with it.
Yeah, and sadly, I don't want to get personal because that's where it will end. But there are people who are in different departments of sports who are doing nothing. By the way, from I think it's called, is it the National Council of Sports? Just right up there. Look at Olympics.
The
How many
ministry
times? The
itself.
ministry, the ministers have been changed left, right, center. Like I don't know. I don't. There's something needed. You see, sports. You should get some people who love sports in these games. You go to soccer. I don't know why even people are complaining about the NRM not leaving power. Everyone doesn't want to leave power in this country. But you see, people.
Well,
Anyway.
it's good morning, Uganda, and I mean, we will keep talking about these things clearly. I'm pretty sure for the sports fanatics in the Ugandan fraternity, they know and they can relate to the pain. So people are really heartbroken, especially when it comes to the performance of the sports sector here in Uganda. The responsible people should be able to do something about that. We need to see a smile on the Ugandan fans' faces. Well, getting into the stories, local stories, international stories, a lot is happening and a lot is yet to happen. For now, we'll be giving you a few highlights here and there. Robert.
Well, we begin with the IGG Honorable Betty Kamya, who says her office has asked for review of the process of appointment of district service commissioners. The government ombudsman Betty Kamya said corruption, nepotism and ring fencing of jobs, among others, will be stamped out for good once the appointment review is done. This comes shortly after President Yoweri Museveni decried the rampant corruption in district service commissions.
Now, Parliament has tasked Minister of Finance to explain the disparities in the figures of public debt following the contradiction in the Ministry and the Auditor General's report. The report was presented by the Minister of Finance had indicated that the current debt burden stands at shillings 78.7 trillion, while the Auditor General report indicates 86.6 trillion.
And moving on, looking at the NSSF saga, Parliament has noted a foul play in the installation of the current Board of Directors of National Social Security Fund. It is alleged that some members in the NSSF board did not follow protocol of connections, which threatens workers' savings. This follows investigations into the operations of NSSF by a select committee which was instituted by the Speaker of Parliament. The committee, chaired by Mwini Mpaka, engaged officials from 2 trade unions, including NOTU and COFTU, in its first sitting.
Now, the Equal Opportunities Commission wants government to set up a youth economic empowerment program in the country to strengthen youth capacity in meeting their subsistence needs. This was communicated by the chairperson of the commission, Hajat Safia Nalule Juko, during the engagement on matters of inclusiveness with the youth in Kampala.
On to the international stories, resistance to military rule in Myanmar has been defined by optimism. When the military first seized power on February 1st, 2021, the mass peaceful protests that emerged were reminiscent of a jubilant street party. Demonstrators sang in the streets, wore silly costumes and carried humorous signs. There was no illusions about what might come next in a country where the armed forces have a history of brutality against those that oppose them. Now, the death toll from a suicide bombing at a mosque in the northwestern Pakistani city of Peshawar has risen to 100, a medical official says, as the South Asian country faces a mounting security challenge from armed groups. The vast majority of those killed in Monday's bombing were police officers. Kashif Aftab Abbasi, Senior Superintendent of Police Operations in Peshawar, told local media that more than 225 people were injured in the blast. The roof of the mosque, which was located inside a government security compound, collapsed in the bombing, and rescuers had to remove mounds of debris to recover many of the bodies, according to what was said by authorities.
Francis has demanded that foreign powers stop plundering Africa's natural resources for the poison of their own greed after he landed in Democratic Republic of Congo as part of a trip to 2 African nations. The 86-year-old Francis is the first pontiff to visit DRC since Pope John Paul II did so in 1985, when the country was still known as Zaire. Hands off the Democratic Republic of Congo, hands off Africa, Pope Francis said on Tuesday to applaud his opening speech to the Congolese government authorities and the diplomatic corps in the garden of Kinshasa's National Palace. Calling Congo's vast mineral and natural wealth as a diamond of creation, Pope Francis demanded that foreign interests stop carving up the country for their own interests and acknowledge their role in economic enslavement of the Congolese people. Stop choking Africa, it is not a mine to be stripped or a terrain to be plundered, said history's first Latin American pope, who has long railed at how wealthy countries have exploited the resources of the poorer ones for their own profit. The climate disinformation surges in denial, conspiracy comeback, or false information about climate change flourished online over the past year. Researchers say with denialists, social media posts, conspiracy theories surging after US environmental reforms and Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. What really surprised us this year was to see a resurgence in language that is reminiscent of the 1980s, phrases like climate hoax and climate scam that deny the phenomenon of climate change, said Jenny King, head of civic action at the Institute of Strategic Dialogue, a London-based digital research group. Popular topics including the false claims that carbon dioxide does not cause climate change or that global warming is not caused by human activity, said Climate Action Against Disinformation, a coalition of campaigners, in a report.
Well, while we are at it, we also do have to remind you, especially now that we are starting a new month, it's just very important that we do start off on a healthy note. So what's your message this morning, Robert?
We must know that you need to be alive. We are beginning the month of love, but one of the things that is very important is you being alive. That is only when you will enjoy this month. So Hallelujah Reflexology Company brings you these drinks that help boost your immune system. Hallelujah Tamarind drink, Hallelujah Ginger tea, Hallelujah banana drink juice. What these do is they keep you healthy. They are not treatment, however, but they just empower your body to fight off a number of diseases. And in the end of it, you make a lot of savings, you're very productive, you enjoy life to the fullest.
Well, in the press review this morning, looking at the New Vision Fast winners and losers in the draft of 2023-2024 budget, about 50 trillion Ugandan shillings budget was passed. Museveni commissions 40 billion Bukalasa College. And in the picture there, you can actually see him with the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports, Mrs. Janet Museveni, during the commissioning of the newly constructed training facilities at Bukalasa Agricultural College in Woblenzi, Luwero District. Muhoozi Camp backs Museveni for 2026. And national IDs nearer to recruit 11,000 workers. Actually, MPs have approved a budget of 12.67 billion for the recruitment of these workers. Pope Francis visits the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, and also they're giving you quite a story about Kole Chotera, an armless boy who excelled in PLE.
Well, also looking at the Daily Monitor, where we see hospitals run out of essential drugs. Quite a touching story there. And MP Namuganza as Pope Francis touches down now the hidden treasures in urban real estate. Also, they give you an insight into the same by local government officials selling jobs. IDD comes out, and inside government opposition joint security meeting. NSSF also inquiry reports Lomoki in spotlight.
Well, we are going in for a break. When we get back, we'll be having some more discussions, especially in the light of children getting back to school. This is the week parents are trying to do what they can, pull all ends to make sure they meet and have these children back in school. We'll be getting into that discussion later on. Good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, happy new month. It is the very first day of February 2023. Well, new plans. I can't say new people because usually we are around the same circles. But hey, if you're bound to meet new people, clearly good for you. New blessings this month. And here on Good Morning Uganda, we are very excited to be able to start off this new month. And of course, my name is Philomena Mastiko. I am with the Mollen, Kenyena. I do have Felix Nkunda. I do have Robert, Kirabo, Nyonyintono, all of us starting off this morning. But I must say that this month is starting off on a very, very, very hot note. Right from Parliament, we did
Pick of the day on UBC. Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
That's
is,
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Okay, so these receipts, okay, plus this one equals
keeping up with your transaction history the old way.
1,000. Okay, I got this. I don't. Okay, maybe if I can just.
Keeping up with your transaction history with the My Airtel app. You have the power in your pocket. The power to keep an eye on your transaction history. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
The most affordable 4G smartphone in Uganda from Airtel. Now heavily discounted from 250,000 shillings to 150,000 shillings only. Yes, 150,000 shillings only to keep you connected to your loved ones.
Dial *175*94# to activate free 1 GB instantly and 100% double data on all weekly and monthly bundles for 3 months. Get one today while stock lasts from the nearest Airtel shop. With Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. 4 minutes past 7 a.m. It is the 1st of February, the second month of the year. The year is, of course, 2023. My name is Philomena Mastiko, and I am joined by Felix Nkunda this morning. Our discussion, of course, is going to be in light with the education sector. Right now, we are looking at parents. If you have been around town or if you have interacted with a parent right now, all you can tell is that they are looking for ways to have these children get back to school. Recently, we had the PLE results come out, and that was, I think, last week on Friday. And we know that the selection process is also around the corner, which should be starting tomorrow, 2nd of February and 3rd. And 20th of February, we should be having Senior 1 candidates also join the rest of the other students in school. So they should be reporting for their first term as well. Now, looking at all of these, I mean, these are just stages that happen every single year, and these are things that we cannot do away with education. But right now, we are still looking at the performance, and we are still analyzing. Every other day, there are certain things that come to light. So in as much as we do all talk about that, there was one analysis that came in from the Lord Mayor, that is Arias Lukwago, who actually was asking for education reforms, especially here in Kampala City. And his argument says that universal primary education should not be something we should be looking at right now, because he believes that it discourages performance, or the quality of education is compromised when it comes to universal primary education, especially the schools under KCCA. Now, this, of course, has raised very many eyebrows and wondering how practical is that? And maybe this morning we could look more into the performance of universal primary education schools under the UPE program and what relevance of it. Now, experts have also come out to actually respond to this, Felix, saying if we did that, this would actually widen the education gap already that we have in Uganda, as in we are already struggling with education to make sure that we are at par with the rest of the world, with the rest of the globe. But now, if we are going to get rid of UPE, or if it's something that he's suggesting, then what happens to the people or the parents who have their children under this UPE program? So this morning, be part of the conversation and let us know what you think about this, and get into our WhatsApp. The platform is quite open for you. Let us know, 0709-602-592, and also get into our Twitter and let us know. The hashtag is UBCGMU. Education, we are all passionate about education here, Felix. And I mean, on several occasions, we have talked about how it's a right for every Ugandan child. And we know that there are several efforts that have come in from different corners, from the stakeholders and authorities, the ministries, to make sure is available to almost everyone, or to everyone that can possibly get to it. And maybe we should start from there. Looking at the performance of UPE schools in the recently released PLE results, Felix, we actually realized that there was an increase in the number of students who registered for PLE under the UPE program, which was way more than the previous years. And I mean, does this have actually a significance? Does it tell us something that we probably haven't given attention to, or enough attention to?
Well, of course, when you talk about, and people talk about universal primary education as the expectations that we have from it, I think, have been misguided, let me say that. But if I'm to just give you a few of just about its inception, it was a requirement by universal declarations that every country that would have probably had a relationship probably with the UN and had ratified some of these various treaties should have a formula or a formidable way to have most of its people in schools. Now, this works directly in two countries preparing themselves for takeoff in terms of the socio-economic growth of those societies. But also, having had a research that a very uneducated population is not productive. Now, if as a country you want to shift from one place to another in terms of your economic status, you must prepare a population that will assist your movement to wherever you want to go. It would be foolhardy for a government like Uganda to think that there is nothing much it can do. In the eyes of some people, it looks as if it's nothing, but if you take a study today, and that's the pain of the things we don't do. if you take a study today and you try to assess how many people have gone through this process, the universal, I think it came into play at 1993.
Yes, 1993.
Up till 2023, those are about 20 years, again, if I'm not mistaken. For the last 20 years, the number of people who have gone through this process, that should give you the thought of knowing how much it has done. Away from these numbers people speak, that these ones failed, where are they? Has there actually been learning? Is there a change in the production processes of a country? Do we have more human resource value when this was introduced? Trust me, one of the, among the many or the few things I applaud government about is this program. Now, the abuse can be talked about later, honestly and truly, whether it has been abused or what. But for now, where you have a country and you need to have what we call an increased number of abled people to be part of the economy. And this is the challenge. When you're talking about UPE, that is, I think, what the connotations came around about. UP, Universal Primary Education, what does it teach? Let's start there. If you take note, it's basically what we call the elementary essentials of learning. Because at that point, UPE, I think, is about from P1 to about P7, if I'm not mistaken. What does it teach? What we call the basic elementary learning: language, environment, awareness, exposure, the things we learn when we are at that level. Does the population need that? How is that useful? Now, when you come and say that you want to scrap some of these things, because you see, and the problem when you talk about this, people normally focus on the urban areas.
Yes.
But you go to rural areas.
I mean, actually, that's where we really have quite a number of UPE schools.
Because that was the purpose anyway. That there are people who are not able at all to get into school. There are people who wouldn't have ever seen school if it wasn't for this UPE thing, by the way, just so you know. Things could be bad, but in Uganda we have a saying that yadde deko ngomu byomweru. You can't be all things. You can't be the ugly one, the black one, everything. At least so it's we say in Uganda sometimes we say that yadde deko ngomu byomweru. At least you appreciate their tonnage in terms of skin. So when you're talking about UPE, if you think in your opinion it's a bad thing, at least it's present, and there are some success stories. When this was being introduced, actually the only thing we have failed is to manage that success, because truly it is a success, but we have failed to manage the success. We have had challenges with feeding, and for me that's the biggest challenge that the UPE has faced: feeding. We have failed to answer the question of those small questions: feeding, what we call facilitation. Facilitation, probably, what do we facilitate for our learners as parents vis-a-vis what government facilitates? If we answer some of these questions, everything will be well. If you move around Kampala, and I will challenge the road mayor himself to take time and move around Kampala. I wonder if he has done that for the 10 or how many years he has been mayor. Just take a week or two, just to move around schools, the UPE schools in Kampala. Some of them now have been attached to, I think I've seen some of the schools, but there are schools in where I grew in Rubaga. That's when you will know how much they are doing. Schools have a big population. That means people are taking kids there.
Yes.
Now, the performance issue, as I've always said, performance is attached to very many things. And you can't sit here and start judging the performance of UPE schools basing on a place where it seems unfair. Performance is coupled with environment. It's coupled with facilitation. And definitely also health. But between you and me, you know the kind of people who go to UPE schools in this country. They're not from very well-to-do families. That means probably they don't feed very well. They don't sleep very well.
Yes.
They have a lot of things they don't access to. Like when you go to schools, nowadays they ask you for textbooks. Sometimes even people can't buy pens and books for these kids. If you've seen schools where people go, I don't want to say this on TV. But there are people we know who went to school bare,
in bare feet.
In bare feet. And even today, 2023, just go around the suburbs of Kampala. So I think we need to focus our argument on how do we better this UPE thing. What contribution? When you say, let's remove these ones from government and take them up as KCCA, I think that's not solving the problem. Because KCCA has very many areas where it's failing as well. But how do we, I think the right question would be.
You don't get rid of it as an authority.
No. I think the biggest question would be for them, how do we assist UPE in our jurisdiction, UPE schools in our jurisdiction, in terms of facilitation? Like how do we, because this is a national program, away from the government talking about politics and all that. How do we facilitate growth or rejuvenate growth? Because I can tell you, 15 years ago, UPE schools were not the way they are today. That's a matter of fact. I told you when I was privileged to go to schools like Shimoni. And I know by the time and how things were being done. But is it the same thing today? Look at the cost of living for teachers and how much they are paid in some schools. Previously, it wasn't a big deal. Teachers were happy to work in government, but now every teacher wants to run to private. Sometimes because of payment. Now there's also this friction about sciences and all these things. But yeah, I think we should just find a way to support this thing, because without UPE, it's easy to talk about it, UPE, whatever, you'll say all those things. But you pull out the UPE aspect in Ugandan education, that's how you know the gravity and its contribution to the spectrum of education in the country. So I think away from having all these clashes with each other, our departments, let's focus on how we can make it better. And the major stakeholders are known, government being the primary.
Yes.
Parents, the students. What is the role of government? What is the role of all government and government agencies, which include the likes of KCC?
Okay.
What is your role, away from just saying, let us...
Now, looking also at the performance now, because I mean, this is a national program. It's not something that you just wake up one morning and you decide to get rid of, because it has a significance in society. But now, looking at how most of these UPE schools, I mean, we have to agree that yes, they do have their shortcomings, which definitely have an impact on the performance generally. When these results come out, obviously, it's quite evident that the UPE schools, there is something lacking, you know. So how do we get into making the performance better? Where do we have to draw, or rather, where do we have to give our attention more, especially from government, also from the other stakeholders? Where do we have to put our concentration more, especially now that we are looking now at the new year, 2024, we'll be looking at the performance and would want to make a review and realize an improvement in the performance.
I even wonder why these people are giving headache to UPE schools. Don't these high schools have failures?
They do.
I don't want to mention names. But the only thing they talk about when...
Even the private ones, by the way, it's not
they
necessary.
All of them have challenges, because truth be told, when you have a class of 10 people, you can't have 10 fast people. There's someone, if all of them are good, so one of them will be better with the handwriting at least. Because sometimes when you're marking scripts for students, after you consider the content, if you want to give someone marks, you'll even go up to the point of punctuation.
Yes.
You start giving him marks. So this issue of saying failing and failing, the only reason we are not having conversation about private schools because they are actually private schools, but they also have these challenges. As I've said, when you're looking at why people fail, I'll tell you honestly, people don't only fail because of this being UPE or this being a private school. People fail for many reasons, and that one I'll say again with experience, by the way, I don't just speak of it. People fail for many circumstantial reasons that surround their livelihood. When you go to some of these schools in the villages, kids walk for over 10 kilometers. So, do you expect that kid to have concentration? when they're coming to an exam. They have walked probably like from here to about Nakawa. But then they reach school at around, you remember the kids, the poor kids who reached when exams had already started and they were chased out of UNEB. It wasn't for the intervention of the Minister of Education. You remember that case?
Yeah, they actually said they can sit for the examinations, they will just withhold the results. But they should sit for the examinations. But remember the case, the kids had moved from for a very long distance, and they had a few distractions.
And tell you what, that's how they have been studying. We only got to know about their case when they had come to do an exam. But that's how they have been studying. Yeah. They have had to move that journey probably for 4 years. Every day. Now, how do you determine that person's performance? And this has been also an argument for us that we cannot use the same scale as much as a national exam to evaluate people with different circumstances. It's a very unfair approach. You have a universal paper or an exam, a national exam, that is going to evaluate different situations. So it's just something for us, because we may be throwing condemnation in the wrong direction. We could be blaming UPE schools for poor performance, yet actually the problem is not them, but there are the circumstantial challenges that surround education in these places. Some kids will spend 2 months without going to school. When you go to some of the villages, in times of, I think, harvest, some kids don't study. I know kungura, because the families survive on what they're in the garden. The time of planting, they have to be part of. They only get to study after some of those periods. And then you find someone studied first term, second term, no appearance, because between probably that time, there's rain, so they have to swim and what. Then he comes back in third term, because that's the life they live wherever they stay. So we must, I think, focus also on the circumstantial challenges of this program, the universal primary education. What can we do to reduce the circumstantial challenges for these learners? Talk about accessories, academic accessories. You've seen, like, and research can be done. Yes, research can be done. We have had a big challenge time and again, language. We have had a challenge with language. People sit exams in English that I don't know if I've told this story. There's a time I had a challenge with one of my family members who studied in a village school at some point. So when we're talking, we saw, in Uganda it's called enkonge. I don't know if you know it. That greenish thing. It's called algae.
The algae, yes.
Now, when I asked, he told me, oh, you come and see the arugoi. I'm like, the what? Arugoi. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I tried to add in my mind what arugoi is. I had to tell the person, show me. So, and actually, that was, in English, it's called algae. Now, someone was taught that it's called arugoi. So you see now it's quite laughable, but that it is. And another scenario, someone came. I remember I had another challenge with one of my students, and the kid tells you, "I'm going to the mosque." Now this was a child who came from the village, and they were actually saying, "I'm going to the mosque," but they were mosque. So it took me time. We have to deal, and it's funny, but this is the reality. Some of us who mark exams, we see this. People can't write English. If your neighbor is honest to write a report of the reasons why people fail and share with Ugandans, one of the reasons will be language. Written. Honestly, some of the teachers out there will testify to this. When you're marking scripts, that's when you know, even at university level, that's when you know English is a problem.
Actually, it's not any different because, honestly, you would assume that universities are more advanced level.
You mark a fourth-year student of law. Spelling, people write Runyankole in English. People write Uganda in English, Rugisu in English, someone writes, but like direct translation. And this is at university. So the English thing, language, and these are the challenges we must be true to confront. And there was one time an argument that we had that, like most recent people teaching languages, I've had now at primary level, people are learning Luganda, but it's not examinable. I had a question one time, and people said... I mean,
I've also seen schools where they're teaching French, they're teaching
Spanish,
Swahili,
German,
Spanish, yes,
Chinese.
even when they're not examinable.
Now, and these are the things we argue about time and again. When you say you're teaching people, you want to teach people Luganda because they are studying in Buganda, how are they all Baganda? So the children, the Baganda children who are in Sebe region, are they learning Sebe? If you're in Uganda studying in Koboko, whatever, Guru, are you learning Acholi? I think we must, this is a hard paper for the guys in education to find out a solution. Language. We have our first language as English, but the big question is, what's the relevancy of that? What's the connection of the language challenge in kids passing exams? And this, again, I say from experience. When you talk about performance of UPE schools, the teachers, some of the teachers, with due respect, can hardly speak the language.
They actually, there are schools I know where they teach, some of the UPE schools, where they teach actually in their mother tongue.
But they have to sit at national
examination
in English. Yes. Now, no one will talk about these things. They'll focus on, hey, university, but no. These kids have the potential just like your kids in urban towns. But there are very many, these kids, for example, you look at urban town kids and how much they interact with the language. Like when they're on TV, it's English. The parents, English. The corridors, English. Now, where will a poor child in somewhere in Kisoro find English somewhere in... There is no place they meet with English apart from classes.
You know, Felix, actually you say that, I don't know, but there is a very common comparison and statement that has been made by people. They tell you, for me, as a school, instead of admitting a child who has been in one of these Kampala prominent schools and they've, you know, come through with 4 aggregates, 5 aggregates, I would rather pick on a child who is coming from a UPE school and probably they scored 8 or 9 or 10 aggregates because they had the ability amidst all the challenges. So imagine a scenario where this child had everything, all the resources, all the education tools and aid and the teachers and the time and the attention. The coaching, this child would have come out with a genuine 4.
And that's the thing, and that's what I'm saying, that we must talk about this the general approach to national exam. You see, a village 8 can be a 4, given the circumstances. But there are also poor kids who get 4s, by the way.
Yes.
You can imagine.
They're there.
And that's that. You remember the report we are looking at, I think was on Monday, that over 100 may not even, some of them fail totally. But they are failures. No one is talking. When we get such a report, do we go deeper in that report to understand? Let's go and make a research into why we have these kids failing. You will be shocked that these failures, you'll have the list numbers attached to academics. You'll find some of them, they didn't study. Some of them didn't get a chance to sit, probably prepare for exams, here school fees, ABCD. And those are the things that should inform how to better this. You cannot remove universal primary education. In fact, someone who says that, it is treasonable. It is selfish. Because you see, us in Kampala have the laxity to change schools because every corner, Chindagateni, but you go to villages, you have to move miles and miles. You need to, let's give an opportunity to Ugandan children. Let's not try to think like Kampala is Uganda and its suburbs. So, in my opinion, I think we need to have we need to take time and restudy how do we assist the UPE process to match up with the trending changes of national growth or international or technology, all these things. How do we? Because we must assist than break it.
Well, we are discussing the performance of the universal primary education schools that are operating under the UPE program. We did realize and notice an increase in the number of children who were able to register for PLE under these UPE schools. Now, this was quite an improvement compared to the previous years. Also, the performance is yet to improve, and that is where we are looking at, rather centering our discussion this morning. How do we get to better the performance in the universal primary education? The numbers are going high, which we like, but how do we now get into bettering the quality of education that is in these UPE schools? Get into our socials, #UBCGMU, and of course use our WhatsApp number 0709602592 to let us know as we go ahead with this discussion. Now, speaking of which, Felix, our kids are going back to school. This is a week.
Yeah.
Shopping is being done, or at least many parents are trying to do that. Yes.
Is it being done?
Well, that's questionable. Actually, that's questionable. It's relative.
Yeah,
because you'll find a parent who is stressed where they're going to get money from. But we have also had prior discussions, and it's concerning how government stopped, especially the private schools, from increasing school fees. Now, all of these things, of course, there's been quite a lot of opposition to that directive. And I mean, I saw a story the other day, lawyers coming through saying that is not in your, it's not a law, so you don't have the powers.
Who asked for their opinion?
Saying, it's not part of the regulation, so you as government, you don't have the power to do that. Anyway, there is quite a lot of controversy and opposition about that, but of course, as an ordinary parent, this is something that they would like. They're taking their children to a private school. But at the end of the day, all of this is because things are hard. The economy is hard, Felix. And I mean, as the years go by, things become harder. Ministries are struggling. We're seeing budget cuts because of, the funds won't be enough. And all of this, at the end of the day, as a parent, you're going to feel the pinch. Now, from one parent to another, honestly, how can a parent really try so much to make sure that they pull through even during these economic times? What would be that word that you tell a parent? And anyway, is there any way that the institutions themselves as schools can come in to understand this? Because yes, it's an institution. It also has a lot of errands to run that need money. So definitely, everyone is trying to survive at the end of the day.
That's quite a sad reality, and I've been thinking about kids going back to school. Like, it's a sad reality.
Very, very sad.
Let me tell you, one of the hardest times of the year is when kids go back to school. And if you see parents and how they struggle to keep kids in school, I wish it would pay back the way. I wish it was a payback with the kind of way they struggle.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish it was a sure deal.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way. That everyone who goes to school, things will turn up. And that's the challenge you also throw back to government. We need to prepare better for the kids we are, because universal education is the biggest, the more achievement, the greater or the latter achievement should be the expanding of the job market. Kids going back to school is people one would call it a sweet sour. We are happy that they are going back to school. Learners, in COVID, we used to cry. Now they're going back to school. However, there is no way we can exonerate government in all these things. Sadly, we always turn back to government. We love the fact and we appreciate that the ministry was quite consistent. I saw the minister coming out very, very vividly saying, you must comply and not increase tuition. And she was like, yeah, let's first leave it at that for now. As we find solutions,
yes.
I think that was the better, like as we find solutions to move to be around this situation, let's also think of the parents. Let me tell you, by the time schools broke off last year, in the circulars they sent to some of the parents, they had already increased. And for the smart parents,
yes.
have already looked for other schools. Kati oina kwenonya, you have to just look where your
what
level
fits in your budget.
Yes. Many parents have been looking for schools left, right, center because of those increments that had already been communicated. I don't know if there will be some enforcement. But when it comes to preparation of school, one of the painful things is that on top of the high tuition amounts that are payable to schools and institutions are the high requirements.
You know, I fail to understand.
The requirements sometimes beat
the list of requirements is longer than the, I don't know, the circular, and you know, it's like the biggest paper.
And sadly, this term is an entry term.
Oh yes.
We have P7. We shall. I'm sorry. P7 going.
People are going to new classes. Yes.
It's the beginning of actually that's the word. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a promotional term. Now that's the point when requirements are hefty.
So because as a school, why are you asking for paint? Why are you asking for barbed wire? Why are you asking for paint brushes? There's some of those requirements are ridiculous, Felix.
Wheelbarrow. Are you going to ride the teachers? I don't know.
Like, and every student is expected to be bringing the same requirements. And I think they have this strict policy.
The ministry must take time and come out and make comment about this. Let me tell you, you look at the requirements list of a P1, a P5, barbed wire, 10 reams of what? 10 toilet papers, 20 toilet papers. Are they coming to learn toilet? See, like, you don't get it. Here you have to bring brooms, 10 brooms.
They'll ask you to bring probably bleaching agent. Is it called what? It's a bleaching agent, I think, and you need to bring like a 5 liter of that. Then you have liquid soap. What is? Okay, I do understand there is necessity for some of those.
When you add all that, they equate to the amount of school fees. Then they bring these additional fees: administration fee, bus fee, what fee, gate fee, headmaster fee, teacher fee, fee. The fees are like education has become no longer something that is available. It's no longer available. It's not affordable. Actually, if we don't intervene on some of these, I call them bogus, because they can't be defended. If you bring a spot-on director or a teacher and you ask them, why do I call for barbed wire? You can't defend some of these things. Now, you find people, you find kids going back to school, they're like going to fetch water. If you have like 3 kids, they have about 20 jerry cans. Taxi, up, like someone is going for marriage. So I think we need to revise some of these things. If an institution, like, these are the challenges. You see, as I've told you, there are things that are circumstantial to academics that may not seem as important, but they fail availability and affordability of education. You send someone for a wheelbarrow. A wheelbarrow.
Well, Paul,
what's the relationship between a wheelbarrow and learning?
Probably they have agriculture as a subject and it comes in handy. I don't know. I am just trying to justify why they would be asking every child
as kids go back, honestly, Philomena. I think, and I want to kindly ask the people in charge of education, the minister, the ministry, please look into some of this. The requirement lists. In fact, for purposes of order, the ministry should come out and give us a guidance that for people between this year, P1 to P7, they should only carry ABCD to schools as requirements. Because you have that mandate as the custodian of education in the country. From S1 to S4.
Because
and sadly, the important things they never ask for. You may find a requirement list that they don't want you.
Anyway, my thought here, Felix, is that if they actually go through with the cap on school fees, these schools will actually divert all that to the requirements. This is something they need to also look into. But I mean, it doesn't quite make a lot of sense. Anyway, our poll question.
It's painful.
Our poll question, let us know what you think and share your views on the performance of UPE schools in your region and how it can be improved. Share your views on the performance of UPE schools in your region and how it can be improved. Hashtag UBC GMU, let us know. But for now, we'll be taking a look at the Daily Nation, the stories in there, where 15 billion Kenyan shillings graft tax cases hot air, a question that has the stakeholders on the hot seat and they need to be answering. Now the DPP says charges were dropped for failing threshold test of prosecution. And they're giving you also quite a number of headshots of those that stood accused and how much money they are expected to be giving accountability for. Now, in more stories in the Daily Nation, Chebukati to Raila, produce video or I will sue you. Pope Francis starts a Central Africa tour and focus on service delivery. Uhuru tells Ruto as he mourns Magoha. And the Citizen DPP's office caught in corruption maze. Oof. We're talking about 51.5 billion Tanzanian shillings. Women in leadership and the next level of success. Magila explains why luck has no place in the tech business, how Tanzania can mitigate climate threats, and DG Cement's position as East Africa's top billionaire. The Citizen, the Daily Nation, New Vision, and Daily Monitor this morning. We will go in for a break. When we get back, Mollen is here, or she'll be here, to give you more from weather and climate and tell us what kind of weather to be expecting. Most likely the sun will be over us again, like it has been for the last couple of days. I'll be back for GMU Agenda. Good morning.
Okay, so these receipts, okay, plus this one equals,
Keeping up with your transaction history the old way.
1,000. Okay, I got this. I don't. Okay, maybe if I can just...
Keeping up with your transaction history with the My Airtel app. You have the power in your pocket. The power to keep an eye on your transaction history. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
Every waking day is a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here. In the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking to the taste of food that takes you on a journey. In the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth. In the magnificence we find on our travels and the exciting moments we experience. Ours is the kind of beauty that comes in all things big and small. All we have to do is awaken our senses and truly enjoy what's uniquely ours. Explore Uganda, the pearl of Africa.
Topic of the day on UBC. Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when
people are not counting, don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
that's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Now we will be getting onto our roads and look at the situation in terms of traffic. We'll be coming in from areas of Chibuye, looking at how you can navigate all through getting into Kampala and, of course, the city center. We're looking at more traffic starting to develop as you are connecting from Nsambia Road. That is where you have a little bit of traffic right there as you join in from the Nachivubo channel. That means that you might encounter a little bit of traffic. That is as you're joining Entebbe Road. So you might have to actually reconsider if you're using Entebbe Road, if you are planning on taking some of the roads off like Nachivubo Road. That has a little bit of clear traffic, and that could be useful as you get into town. But also, if you continue with that whole lane from Entebbe Road, it looks like there isn't much traffic over there. Well, there is construction works around that area, but then again, it looks like right now it is quite clear in terms of traffic as you head onto joining Kampala Road. It looks like that is also quite some clear traffic. Now, there are some of the roads that are actually having very much traffic right there that you might need to avoid, and that is also involved in Lumu Street, that area that connects from Entebbe Road towards Kampala Road. That is one you might need to avoid. Also, you look at some of the roads on the upper side of Kampala Road, the City Square area. It looks like it's quite a little bit of traffic if you're using that Square 1 road. But then again, if you're coming all the way from areas like Lumumba Avenue, it looks like that road is quite okay for you to use this morning. The upper Nakasero Road has a bit of traffic, so that is one you might have to avoid and instead probably use Lumumba Avenue, which looks to be having clear traffic if you're joining onto that roundabout all the way to Speak Road. And that also gets in a little bit of traffic, but for those leaving town. But if you're using Speak Road joining into town, it looks like that is also quite clear traffic all the way towards Nile Avenue. That is also having clear traffic. If you want to use Nile Avenue to join onto Ginger Road, the Kampala Ginger Road, that is quite a good one for you that you could use this morning. And of course, looking at a little bit of that as well, joining onto Lumumba, a Useful Road, looks like that is also a little bit of clear traffic, and you could use that to get onto Kampala Ginger Highway. Now also, we want to take a look at what is happening in the world of weather and nature. We'll be starting off with some of the climate news coming through. And yesterday we did have a symposium that was organized by the World Meteorological Organization. And of course, they're looking at right now forging a way forward, especially on climate action. And they're talking more into infrastructure development and how do we monitor what infrastructure is being developed and how are we transitioning right into that kind of phase. And of course, one of the things that we're measured about is when it comes to emissions and how do we monitor the data that will be showing the greenhouse gas emissions within the atmosphere. Now, that is one thing that was talked about, but also supporting the Paris Agreement. That is one thing that was also key in this symposium, looking at local support for green cities. How are countries making their efforts towards having green cities? Of course, we know that that takes in a lot, especially when you're talking about issues of sustainability and moving into how cities can cope with the changing climate, integrating and modeling on how we can get computer models and see the outputs of whatever industrial action is happening around us. And of course, they're talking about sustained routine global monitoring of greenhouse gas concentrations and fluxes that is required to help us understand climate change and to provide support to mitigation action taken by the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That was way back even when we incorporated the Paris Agreement in 2015. But currently, most of the greenhouse gas monitoring is undertaken. It does rely heavily on the research, and this is where organizations now like WMO are coming up to see how soon they can get some of this information readily available. Now, if you look at the need to look at the increasing focus on the role of greenhouse gases as a driver of climate change, of course, you need to also strengthen the information chain and look at the basis for decisions in climate mitigation efforts. And of course, that is how communities can develop frameworks for sustainable development, looking at how when we know what we are dealing with in terms of greenhouse gases, then we know which area is emitting most and how do we then move away from that. Of course, we do have some practices that have come up, and that is, of course, monitoring industrial action, but it looks like there is also need for more information guiding us on how far we have polluted and how we can actually go forward with that. Otherwise, you also see some of the efforts that have come up, like, for example, the move towards renewable energy. And this is where we also had a report that came out recently from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that report is talking about mostly how we move towards renewable energy, especially when it comes to looking at that is solar panels. Now, the UN Climate Convention did talk about how we can internationally look at supporting especially developing countries to have a swift transition into harnessing some of these readily available or natural sources of energy. And of course, that's where we bring in solar energy. This is something that has potential, especially if you look at continents like Africa. We do have some of the areas, like for us here in the tropics, we have all year round mostly sunny conditions. So that means that it is very easy for us to move towards renewable energy. In terms of solar energy, that can be easily harnessed, but the capacities have not been strengthened. You look at renewable electricity capacity addition that have been outpacing those non-renewable energy since 2014. So meaning that, yes, there is a positive note. The report does show that 90% of the global electricity capacity expansion has been realized in these past 5 years, and also in the next 5 years, they could be looking at 90%. That means it could actually become the largest source of energy or electricity generation by 2025. That will be surpassing coal. Now, right now, we do have a lot of concerns, of course, that are coming in from climate scientists saying that most countries have not adapted specifically into how we make 100% transition from the use of coal. And that is for sure, because we know most countries within Europe, Germany inclusive, have been actually going back and forth about the use of coal. But how about if we could refocus that energy and make sure that we have most of these going across? And of course, that's one that did come out from also following the COP27 cover decision that recognized that about $4 trillion per year had been invested in renewable energy up to 2030. That will help us to actually reach a net zero, which is where we're talking about the emissions in 2050 as well. Now, also the positive news comes out indicating that we could also be looking at more of what we do in terms of electricity, and that is the electricity buses. Now, there is good news over there showing that investing more into electric buses could be one of those things that we actually hope the world move towards reducing emissions in the atmosphere. A new World Bank report makes a strong economic case, that is when it comes for wider adoption of electric vehicles in developing countries, specifically developing countries. And this is where I'll give an example of Uganda. We did have our works get started, especially with Kirabo motors. We've seen transition to EVs, that is the electric vehicles. This is something that the World Bank is saying it's now adding up, and people are getting better percentages when it comes to how we have mostly countries moving towards electric buses. Now, the study that was carried out recently by World Bank, they did take a sample of 20 countries across Africa, South America, the Caribbean and Europe, and that has indicated that there is much uptake that is associated with the EVs and already justified in terms of low operating costs. So but their advice, according to that, is if countries can actually look at the cost, the operational costs that are involved in electric vehicles, we could be saving a lot, especially with the use of fossil fuels. That means we're getting more into electric cars, we leave the emissions aside, and that's how we get into a path of net zero. Away from that, we also want to see what is happening across Uganda for this morning. We'll be tapping into satellites and looking at what we have over Uganda for this morning. That EUMETSAT satellite indicating mostly a sunny morning across the northern area of the country. That takes in eastern Uganda as well. We did also start off with mostly sunny weather for much of central. We're looking at more of that also crossing over onto West Nile. But the good news is that we're looking at a rainy system that is starting to develop over Lake Victoria. That is indicated in red and orange right there, and that is the one that could be bringing us rains across the central area of Lake Victoria as well as the western part. That system is still moving and looks like it is going westwards. So that means it could be bringing us rains, especially across areas of western Lake Victoria Basin. We also have one that is moving right towards western Uganda. That looks to be moving more to the Congo side though, but a bit westwards. So an advection of that could bring us a few spills of wet weather activities, especially towards the lower side of midwestern Uganda. We could be looking at more rains picking up for today across southwestern Uganda. That is across areas of that is Mbarara. You look at areas of Kabale that could also be picking up in terms of weather activities for this morning. We also will be looking at the forecast for this morning that is coming in from Uganda National Meteorological Authority, and also looking at those numbers in terms of temperatures, what we could be expecting for different areas within the country for this morning. We're starting off with mostly sunny weather, that's for sure, across eastern Uganda. We're also looking at the northern area of the country having mostly sunny weather. But then again, we will see in the forecast, according to the numbers that we have for this morning, but we have been experiencing mostly warm weather still for the areas that continue with sunny conditions, that is across the north and eastern Uganda. But the forecast for the western parts of Lake Victoria Basin, we're looking at Masaka, Kalisizo, Zimbabwe and Rakai. We are looking at rainy weather for this morning, starting off with a chilly 25 degrees. Now, the eastern side of Lake Victoria, Tororo, Busia, Iganga and Jinja will be having rains later on as the morning progresses, and that will be starting off at a pleasant 26 degrees. Mount Elgon Highlands, Mbale, Bududa, Buko and Sironko, we are forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, and that will be starting off with a warm 28 degrees. We look at Mbarara, Ibanda, Bushenyi and Rubirizi. We're forecasting rains that will be coming in later as the morning progresses, and quite a cool morning at 24 degrees. We could be looking at more rainy conditions coming up in the afternoon. That is for western Uganda. Now across the eastern parts of the country, Soroti, Katakuya, Moria and Kumi, we are forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine that will be starting off quite hot at 30 degrees right there, and that could only get hotter in the afternoon, as we do expect to continue with mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine. The eastern parts of central Weru, Woblenzi, Bururi and Nakaseke, we're forecasting isolated Mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine. That will be throughout the morning at a warm 29 degrees centigrade, also clearing for more sunny weather in the afternoon. The central parts of northern Uganda, where we have Jumani, Gulu, Kitgum and Badel, we're looking at a mix of clouds and sunshine, mostly starting off quite warm at 29 degrees centigrade. Could also be looking at much more temperatures getting into the lower 30s by afternoon. That is for the central parts of northern Uganda. We're looking at the Lake Victoria Basin, the central area, that is Mukono, Kampala, Entebbe and Wakiso. We are forecasting rainy conditions that will be starting off with a chilly 25 degrees centigrade. We do expect those rains to come through later as the morning progresses, and also that system is most likely to cross over into the afternoon. So you could look out for those rainy conditions that might get into the way for today, and most of that is forecast for especially the southern sector. We will see more picking up also for the West Nile, that is the northwestern part of the country, across Arua, Yumbe. Could be having a little bit of rains coming through for today, but also that will be over a few areas. Otherwise, the rest of the country will remain with mostly dry conditions and sunny conditions. Well, that is it in terms of weather updates for this morning. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a good one.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Of the day on UBC. Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when
people are not counting, don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
that's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak Luo.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
Was brought to you by Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An individual human hair is very thin. This sounds very hard to do and kind of pointless. Let's listen.
Jonathan, I don't know which notebook to use.
It's a notebook. What's the difference?
Huge differences. This one has lines. This one does not. This one has a spiral binder. This one does not.
Okay, now you're just splitting hairs.
When you split hairs, you focus on really small and unimportant differences between two or more things. This is a useful expression during an argument. If you are arguing with someone over something very small, you can say, "Let's not split hairs." it's not worth it. And that's English in a minute.
It's better to foster respect instead of fear and pain.
Cause a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Every waking day is a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here. In the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's what you feel in the gentle caress of tropical wind from the mountaintops. And the glow in your heart from a warm neighborly invite. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking to the taste of food that takes you on a journey. In the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth. In the magnificence we find on our travels and the exciting moments we experience. Ours is the kind of beauty that comes in all things big and small. All we have to do is awaken our senses and truly enjoy what's uniquely ours. Explore Uganda, the pearl of Africa.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
The GMU agenda starts right now here on Good Morning Uganda. And of course, we are coming to you live on UBC TV on this first day of February 2023. My name is Philomena Mastiko. I am with my guest this morning. I do have Robert Kirabo, Nyonyintono, and of course, Felix Nkunda, who seems to be already in the mood for Valentine's. I am seeing the red tie, and it's interesting. Of all people, you're the last person I expected to see red tie on. But well,
quiet people, they're silent. We in school used to call them silent.
But you can't put Felix and quiet in the same Robert.
Outside there, people will tell you Felix is He's, you know, the silent banners. This guy is a silent
It's a liar
banner.
putting it out to your national.
Felix
Felix is not a quiet man. He's not.
Not in your presence, he's not.
Everywhere. This man.
The time he spent in these places, what are they called, where they train priests? Seminary. There's even a time you find him moving exactly like a priest. Maybe you've ever noticed.
Robert.
Anyway, this is a month of love, not violence.
But honestly, love is a good thing.
Wow.
No, love is a good thing.
Agape love?
Any kind of love, as long as love, it is. I wish we had more opportunities to share love in this world about each other. Imagine how this world would be.
Well, speaking of love, we have 28 full days to talk about love. And of all the loves that we'll be talking about, I would love to ask you, how often do you show love to your country, Robert and Felix?
How often does it show love to me?
Well, that's a fair question.
Is it?
It's a fair question.
Well, you live in it.
It's a take and give.
Yeah, this morning was talking about how he rode on the what?
The Kampala flyover. He unofficially launched.
What more love do you want? This morning you got a piece of love from your country, so
it's now on you to give back the love. Well, anyway, and one of the ways I know you can do that is definitely to pay your taxes to make sure that
then you question what the taxes do later.
Speaking of questioning, we do have a Transparency International report that came out showing the performance when it comes to fighting corruption in the world. Uganda, East African region, actually they took a look at 180 countries. Now, according to this report, it actually shows that Uganda's fight against corruption has declined. And the 2022 Corruption Perceptions Index reveals quite some progress against corruption as the world, of course, becomes more violent. And the report says corruption levels remain at a standstill for the 11th year consecutively. We're looking at 11 years, and it just went a position lower. Now, they took a look at 180 countries, and overall, Uganda came out as the 142nd. And the total score for Uganda was 26 out of 100. I don't know if we were to grade F9, pass 8, pass 7, I don't know what grade that would be. But total score, we have 26 out of 100. And this is one drop from 2021, from 27th to 26th. Now, with all of that, we've been having quite some good discussions about corruption, not only this year, last year, and even the years back. And for me, my issue is we dropped only one position below, but also, I mean, I would say this is not significant enough. And they're also saying, this report says that for the 11th year consecutively, our fight against corruption is at a standstill. Robert, what do you have to say about that?
You see, one of the things, if you're born in Uganda, the moment you're able to notice what is happening, the first thing will be corruption. Because, you know, when a child is born, there's that stage where they begin to know I'm a human being and all that. About 4, 5 years there.
No.
Maybe. Where you can go to hospital, or you can carry this child and they can see, like in Uganda, where a lady, you know, where there's that sense of understanding, you can have now memories that you're in Uganda.
In fact, Robert, that's voluntary. I feel like involuntarily there are children who are born as a result of corruption.
I'm coming to that. So, corruption in Uganda,
such kids,
is a cancer. I want to equate it to cancer that is eating us slowly by slowly, despite tremendous efforts we've put in place. They are not yielding. For example, we have 17 laws on corruption in this country. My land friend here will tell you what a law means if it's put in place. 17 laws. We have 12 institutions that were put in place, an act of parliament, this, to fight corruption. And I don't think in the world there's any country that has that. 17 laws, 12 institutions. Now, I don't want to mention the IGG, the State House Anti-Corruption Unit, police has a directorate, is it corruption, fraud, and what? There are so many you can mention, coupled with the number of civil society organizations. You have committees in parliament that are there to check. Anywhere you go, you're going to find something that is checking corruption in Uganda. But what is funny, you'll end up looking at this corruption index, that in East Africa, we are ranking 4th. Now, if you have the laws, you have the institutions, the big question would be, what is not being done? Every year, Uganda loses 10 trillion to corruption. Meaning if our budget today is 50 trillion, the budget for the financial year 2023-2024 is 50 trillion. 10 trillion of that budget is going to be stolen. That is according to the IGG, Honorable Betty Kamini, and her report, 10 trillion every year. But how do you explain that you have 17 laws, 12 institutions, you know you lose 10 trillion of your budget, world rankings continue to put you not at a good place. So that means we lack the will. We just lack the will to fight corruption. And when we talk about lacking the will, it's not only for people in government, but all of us as Ugandans. I want to tell you, it is in this country where a person will tell you, naye Kirabo, tewali kye tuyinza kukola ne tumala ensonga eno. I think you've heard of that. Yes. Anyone now in Uganda knows there's something we can do and we have a shortcut. PLE exams are back. Today people are calling others. Why? Ebudeyo, twenayo gwomanyi. You hear that say? No twafunye musanvu twagala genda buddo. I mean, isn't there someone you know in buddo? My child didn't get the grades, yeah? But if you know someone, we can find a way of doing it. Gayaza, Nabisusa, St. Mary's, don't you have someone you know there? And meaning someone you know there that we can influence. Influence how? Influence with money. Because your child has not got the aggregates to go to that school. But you want your child to go to that school where it is very clear, there are cut-off points. For boys is 5, for girls is 6. But for you, you're saying, my child must be in that school, I can bribe entry of that child. Now that child enters that school knowing I was not meant to be in Budo. I'm just using it as a case point, because it has been in the media anyway. I was not supposed to be in Budo. But my father found me in Budo. So this child is going to grow knowing that there is corruption. So we are lacking the will as a nation to fight corruption. We condemn corruption where we do not benefit. But the structures to fight corruption are there. I'll give you an example. In my career as a journalist, when I was still very active in the field, covering here and there, I remember one time we had a VIP who was arrested. One, when he was arrested, I think is a Mohoro, I think it's a tribe from Western Uganda. The Mohoro stood up, even came and said they wanted to meet the president. Why are you taking our own? We had a VIP vice president who was sent over Chogam money. I saw top officials from the Catholic Church going to visit, saying, you know, this, that. I saw Uganda caucus by then in parliament. And the notables who keep on condemning corruption, including my good friend, Honorable Betty Bachileke, they were saying, sorry, excuse me, stood up and said, then we went into some of these areas. So the question is, that day we wake up all as a country and say, no, you can't be earning 2 million. In 2 years, you've built a building of $1 billion and the community. Look at church today, Philo. This church fundraising.
Yes.
My great friend here, Felix, always tells me why sometimes he doesn't want to go to church. That people who rarely come to church, they come and they are greeted with a lot of honor, given front seats. This man is under investigation over corruption. This man is under investigation over theft. No wechitiwa gundi atuse. Gundi atuse.
And these are the people who are supposed to be calling out some of these leaders, individuals, yes.
Then the altar boys, the Felix who strip the church, they are told stand up. Move sembera keria mabiga. This man gets the first seat. Then what hurts me most is even is given opportunity to come at the altar and speak to the congregants.
Even when the congregation knows that this is a corrupt official, there is evidence, there is
the
proof.
public court. Yes. Is what we call the public court. We say that son so stole money, but because of these gymnastics tactics, then the man comes at the pulpit and is given a microphone. Then he speaks. Then after he says, "I've donated 50 million towards the building
from the money that
of the church."
You don't want us to clap. The man has given us money for iron sheets, for roofing.
This is evil money.
Also, you're not sure that that money is going to do what it's supposed to do, because right now corruption is in all institutions.
Whose money am I sure of? Even the one who brings 500, do I know where they
rather, but you see, morals and righteousness, where they begin. So we are all enjoying corruption today. Police carries out an operation. Person doesn't have a driving license. They tell him your fine is 40,000. He says, "Nah, officer." Me going in those things. So as long as we are not willing, government is us, the people. As long as we are not willing, you bribed your child to get a vacancy in some school where he didn't qualify, then you're condemning someone. Yes, we must say we are willing to fight corruption. Much as our leaders have a great role to play as well. Because in Uganda, we need what we call sacrificial lamb. We need to sacrifice some people to send a message. I was in Kakumiro, and I watched His Excellency while in Kakumiro when he talked about corruption. He talked about public service commissions, district service commissions. He talked about how some people even getting jobs, some girls are slept on. He talked about, he mentioned where the problem is.
Yes.
But the biggest challenge is if they wake up and they tell you it is your son who is doing this, are you willing to let that person go?
That is where the problem always comes. Even the people who condemn the corruption, until it's somebody they are closely
when it comes to them, it is a witch hunt.
Yes.
So you have institutions, you have laws, you can't still have corruption. You're lacking the will.
Well, clearly, and maybe to take you through some of the performance, even on the East African region. Now, in East Africa, Uganda came in as the 4th. But looking at Kenya, the performance, this is a score out of 100. Now, Kenya scored 32%, Tanzania scored 38%, Rwanda scored 54%, and the Democratic Republic of Congo scored 20%, and Burundi scored 17%. South Sudan, on the other hand, scored 13%. All of this is out of 100. But, Felix, this corruption has eaten all institutions. And I did see somebody say, but we would use the law to fight corruption, but even the enforcers are corrupt. The allegations that the judiciary system could be one of the most corrupt. How do we go about this? If the law can't save us...
You said what? The judiciary could be what?
It could be one of the most corrupt.
I almost missed that, okay.
Yeah. So if the law is not going to help us, who is going to help us?
Well, when you guys were talking about corruption much earlier, you made it seem like we're talking about an abstract person there. That corruption will take 10 trillion, corruption will do corruption. Like, and this is where, in my opinion, we first of all acknowledge fault. That we speak about corruption like it's not amongst us. We speak, everyone who stands up to talk about everyone who stands to talk about corruption speaks about it like it's there. Like when he's like he said, he was talking like it's there. When the ministers come, they talk about it like it's something there. The IGG will talk about it like it's. We need to understand this is something we live with. And I always have an approach, and I tell some of my colleagues and my subordinates, if you want to find a solution to every problem, never look far from yourself. Don't look so far from yourself. Like even when we are doing some of these, when you're doing questioning in cross-examinations, when you're trying to help these witnesses, when you're answering your question, don't like, and some of these things are simple, and this is where sometimes our anger comes in as wananchi. When you're dealing with issues like corruption, don't look at it thinking like it's very far from you. I hear people talk about the government workers, but you're seated also in the national broadcast.
When you're a government worker.
That's the thing. I like how Robert has put it. Like, government is us. When you ask what is government, someone talk about the army, talk about the judiciary, but who gives the bribe to the judiciary? Who is bribing the state attorney? Is it a government official? Is it a judicial officer? It is you, wananchi. Corruption must be looked at not far a problem from us. All we have done for so many years is a blame game, and it has not yielded any results up till today. When the parliament is talking about, we are going to probe Uganda Railways, Uganda Airline. After Uganda Airline, we are going to NSSF. After NSSF, we shall go to Uganda Railway. After that one, etc., etc., etc. Who is probing you? Parliament. Who? But every report, every committee.
Yesterday, Honorable Semjunganda was responding to this. He said the corrupt are everywhere. They're in Parliament here as we are speaking.
Let me tell you the stories we have heard about Parliament.
Gotten them there.
It's what I'm coming to. Like when members of Parliament, if the way they probe others, if there was an opportunity to probe Parliament, you would cry. How they get in those positions? You've just talked about that. The level of corruption that happens in election time, we have been part of these elections, we know. You get it? But when people start talking about the judiciary, the most corrupt, have you ever seen a judge giving a judge money to decide a case? Let's be honest. It is not the judge who gives the judge or a magistrate who gives the magistrate. It is a person who has a case, who doesn't have enough evidence, who wants to win, who now starts to trigger the mind of the judicial officer towards their interest. Is that the judiciary?
So both parties are fully involved in it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying, if you want to tackle corruption, don't think of it as a far abstract thing.
Yes.
They are corrupt. Let's go to the roads. Some of you who have been on airports, you know what happened. Not until this whole thing broke loose. Go to the borders. Some of you are cross borders. Go to hospitals. Let's be honest. How many people in this country die because they can't bribe their way to the theater?
We saw recently Mastiko was arrested because he asked for a lady who was in labor 200,000 for her to get operated.
People ask 10K. You people, where do you live?
I mean, it was yesterday when I was put the spotlight for talking about 50,000 Uganda shillings.
Yes. Go to the roads of Uganda. And this I'm telling you, don't talk about corruption like it's a village somewhere. Corruption is going to take 5 what? That 10 trillion you're talking about is what? Don't think far from yourselves. The apple doesn't fall far, like they say, the Englishmen. Corruption is a vice that has been, probably the dose we share of in our blood. The example Robert gave. And we, as a country, as every institution, in fact, don't even put government. Government is only on a stand because it is government. And we get to know its transaction. These transactions are public. But when you go to the private sector, you're talking about 10 trillion for government. In the private sector, it goes up to even the full budget of Uganda. Go to these authorities. And one thing we need to learn about corruption, we are focusing on money, but the manifestation of corruption does not only exist in monetary exchange. It manifests itself in things like tribalism, okay, nepotism. How do people get jobs? I can
Actually, Felix,
to tell you and confess.
Just a point of information, when they were ranking areas that they focused on, they looked at these areas: ability of government to contain corruption, excessive red tape in public sector, nepotism, appointments in the civil service, bribery, diversion of public funds, using public offices for private gain with no consequences. There are some of the areas that they were looking at while making this report, and that's where we're able to score
that's what I'm saying, that when you talk about corruption, people seemingly want to make it look like government, because it is in the public domain in terms of news, it's easy to access in terms of information, but later on, you must also focus on the things that surround the activities of corruption. I've talked about, and these things are, if you, one day you wake up and say, you go to an institution, I can name, just name any authority, corporate, a corporation, or immediately get, I don't know about it, I'm not going to, okay, name
just an example.
Immediately get and tell everyone, how did you get here? So, but you don't talk about corruption as a far evil. It is living within us. And one of the biggest fuelers of corruption is things like family.
That's the primary unit? Is that what they call it?
That's the problem. Now, this thing, and that's when words like nepotism, tribalism come in, sectarianism, like that's where it starts. You go to an institution, and it is a family institution. Father is there, mother is there, uncle is there, granddaughter, judge, bareta naba taina chebamanyi, from the gate to the top office. And no one wants to talk about that because our focus is all about money. You get the point? In this country, it is where people say, which is I find as a very, very fake and bogus statement. When you say your net worth is what? Is your net worth. How? Now, where do you feed in personal effort? People no longer study at universities because they are sure there's Uncle Bob.
It's a given, they know
someone
there is a job.
Gets a job at P7 level. I want to assume I'm in a because Uncle Bob is director somewhere. But we're not giving space for competitive advantage in terms of execution of work. You get the point? And this is the real corruption we are talking about. Because this is what breeds now. Because when you have Kirabo on my side, I have Phil on my side, who's going to check me? I've put my daughter as the accountant. The mother is the head, maybe administration. The father is the chairman, board of directors. There's a sister somewhere in finance.
Now when a poor CID officer comes to investigate,
everyone is knocking himself for the family. We're very now. So that's the thing.
Then in court you don't have enough evidence.
If you want, so these things, then you come and blame. You know, some of these things, when you see such rankings, it is laughable. Let me tell you, integrity is the only cure to corruption tendencies. Now, integrity is not a taught discipline. Integrity is a mannerism that must be initiated as a process, as part process of life. Integrity is not a class subject. Let me tell you, the things you see
that you'll have at university where they
I want to be honest, and some of these stories we won't discuss on air because they have drawn lots of controversies for our colleagues in media houses. But if we had the liberty too, you would be surprised. Honestly and truly, Kirabo, you know that a job has its requirements. Kirabo, for you to be a director of an institution called X, you have to have probably a degree, okay? You have to have done a master's in that area, and experience for about 15 years. What are you doing there? What are you doing? Like, in all fairnesses, why do you want to have that position if you don't qualify for it? Because there's a reason why we put measures for perm positions, because of the demand that comes with that kind of work. And these are incompetences.
Yes.
You find a person representing a government institution or even private institution. Now, I don't even want us to focus on only government institutions. We have had this discussion about members of parliament.
Yes.
Why do you stand? Why like people are users? We have members of parliament. Is it about 2 years now since they voted? I think about 2 years. They have never deliberated it. Now, but you stood, you lied people, you faked people. That is and now you're coming talking about corruption, dude.
We're talking about fighting corruption. How best can cities here in Kampala achieve transparency in all their modes of operation and all institutions, private, public? Clearly, this has become a problem. I do have some feedback coming in here from a number of viewers, and here, Geoffrey from Kamwenje. Geoffrey from Kamwenje is saying that all government ministries are inflicted with corruption. Ministries, departments, and agencies. I mean, if we started right from there, we would know who is who. But I think we already know who is who. We already know where this corruption is actually stemming from. But I also have another viewer here who is saying corruption is not in any organization, but it's us who give our money to those people. So if we could actually not give out this money, then corruption would have not been expanding. So we have to sort ourselves. In other words, we are enablers. We are the ones who enable these people to fully engage. But also there are instances where these people ask you for this money and you give it. But I feel like still this it goes back down to you, because we have normalized it. We know that if I am going to seek for a service, if I'm going to do this, I have to use a shortcut, whether it's monetary, whether it's I have to talk to a family member to connect me. You have to have an extra budget. That is what I called trash yesterday. You can't do that. I mean, this is a service that is supposed to be rendered to you for free. If it's going to be a job, you have your qualifications, you have your experience, and you would be deemed fit for this position. But because of all these people, you're okay with it. We have seen people complain, and we get to a point where people are giving up. But Robert, again, maybe getting back to the regulation, do you also feel like maybe the regulation or the laws have enabled the corruption, aside from us, the ordinary people, and also the people in power? But speaking of the law independently, do you think it has enabled the corruption rates to even go higher? If yes, how?
Personally, I see no problem with our laws. We have about 17 laws on corruption. I see no problem with them, because those very laws have been able to arrest a few people.
A few.
Where there is will to have them arrested.
Okay.
And I want to be very honest when I'm saying this. Our laws are sufficient enough to handle the corrupt in this country. But the challenge is there is a lack of will to end corruption. There's so much lip service. All of us, I want to use the words of the late Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Olanya, when we had the anti-corruption walk from Constitutional Square to Koro. He said, His Excellency, all of us here are corrupt. We are doing this for camera, but we are going to go back and
get back into business. Yes.
May his soul rest in eternal peace. Now, what we lack in Uganda, and I will emphasize this, is the will. I don't want to believe that Godfrey Kazinda is the most stupid Ugandan that has ever existed. That for him he was able to steal and leave traces that he has been arrested since I was in journalism school till today. From one case to another, he wins this, there is that. The likes of Jimmy Ramafa, the likes of this lawyer who died, did Bob Misang or something like that?
Bob.
There is a list. Philo, these people are there for corruption. If we've been able to arrest these, there are people in this country that the public court will tell you that person is corrupt. They go to courts of law. Guess what happens? Evidence, this, that, this. Then they get out. I know of a person who was implicated, began his legal process. when he had 1 degree, now he has a PhD.
Yes.
He's out studying, but they say there is a case in court till today. So me, I have no problem with our laws. They have been able to arrest people. They are still able. Look at these accounting officers they arrest day in and day. 2 million, 5 million. So I remember there's even one judge who said, I'm tired of getting small fish. I want to get the big fish, bring them before me.
Who refused him to get them?
Because we've seen people that have been let off the hook.
In Uganda they call them what? Banan Mutagambwako.
They have been let off the hook. And this is
also had the same charge.
Yes, just what I'm going to say, but you people. Knowing she had just been appointed on that commission, she thought she was going to do magic.
Until they told her to go to report to God.
She ended up, and if you want to report me to God.
But where does that power and audacity come from? That is what we need to
when you know that there is no will, you know, she reached a point of saying, Robert, I want to find out the name behind that. Is it names something? She looked frustrated. She has been aging fast if she didn't leave that committee. Because every day the lady would come out and say, I have this thief. Then either stop or you find that maybe you touched a wrong button. So, the day we wake up, and I want to emphasize this, I don't want to believe that these laws are bad when they are weak, when they have been able to put people that may I call sacrificial lambs. But we need more. If we are sacrificing, we need more sacrificial lamb. Second, in life there's one thing I learned. There must be a U-turn in everything. The day we wake up and say that today as a country from this date, he who has stolen, stop now. Because from now, whatever you're going to do, if you're found, you'll be taken on. And we get those names I want to mention. Can you imagine, Philo, there's a person who will be in every corruption scandal in this country.
And you wonder, why is this the common denominator?
In
why
every scandal mention,
yes,
his name. In every scandal, his name. And these people have amassed billions of worth. They are rich like heaven is. So, and investigating them.
That's so unfair for you to say.
They're filthy rich.
Human man to health,
may the Lord forgive me.
Wealth.
But they are filthy rich. They have stolen for themselves, for their families, for their great children and great children.
Yeah.
So, it is just lack of will.
You know, you spoke of evidence, and there is a comment here, somebody saying, you see, about corruption, we cannot get rid of it if the term evidence is still very strong in Ugandan vocabulary. You will do this and that, and they will ask you to provide evidence. In fact, this person is making reference to a time they were watching a parliamentary session last week where one of the MPs raised an issue about committees of parliament dealing with corrupt technical workers, and after arresting them, they are left without, you know, they are free, they are not held accountable, and there is no action that is taken against it. And the speaker asked for evidence, and what she said apparently is that if there is no evidence, please close that point and sit down.
But you see, even the judiciary, one time I went to court of law with my funny lawyer, and we had a case.
That wasn't me. Just for purpose of viewers.
It wasn't
funny lawyer.
I'll leave it at that.
That
when the man comes back, I ask this, but my file, he said, but you see, there's Hempewe Genda Twala file. I'm like,
there is even a jargon for that corruption
put
language.
A stone.
That is how much we have
put
gone.
A stone, and I asked my lawyer, now, Mukuru, Jinja Shiribate, which stone? He said, no, you need to put money. You need to put money. You know, I'm like, what? Are you? Yes!
And sadly, those are things you never learn from school. You meet them in practice. You go like, man, you ask the clerk, what happened to the file? Which one? Like, I gave you a file. It's like,
things don't work like that.
After tossing you like for 2 months, you're like, man, I think I need now to. But honestly, and just picking up from what Robert was saying, and what you said about one of the comments of our viewers, Philo and Robert, You know, the reason why not everyone is not acting on things like corruption, it's just a psychological thing, because everyone is corrupt in a way. Even the ones who can come out to speak out, fear, because after they speak, someone will come and say, you remember also, like, like that's how bad it has eaten us. There's a taint of corruption on every person, every ship in this dock is tainted.
Whether you have been quiet about it, whether you have actively
Somehow,
partaken in it.
Let me tell you, corruption in this country is demanded. As you talked about something, it's a miscellaneous budget you must have for travelers. As you had the confessions for traveling, you get the point. Because in case of anything, but you have everything.
Getting police bond?
Really? How do you even do that without like chin to chin?
Someone tell you.
But if you want my comment lastly, as our time probably is running there. These reports come out and they have become routine. In fact, let me tell you, corruption, the challenge we face with corruption is not that it is a bad problem, only that people are benefiting out of it. If I may speak from the words of some leader who come and say that, but the good thing is that they're investing that money in. You get the point? Corruption is not a singular problem of Uganda. It's a global, universal problem. And it starts with the indifferences of favor. When you go to the Bible, Cain and Abel, as long as you put your eyes off your blessing onto the other person's blessing, that's where corruption starts. Hannah, Penina, you remember, you do these stories in the Bible. Read the story of Esther. As long as there is an element of inequality, you can't outrule corruption. This is a given. What we can do is to try and be integral. Let's be people of integrity. If actually we can hold it up. But with this system, the only thing we can ask is that this isn't even unfair that I'm saying this, but I'll say it. The only thing we can do for ourselves is to be smart about the things we choose to do. Because you're not going to stand there and start lying yourself that corruption is going to end. And I want to
Of course not.
Let's not we can reduce.
Yes.
We just have to be more intentional. And that's where, in some countries that you read that are doing so much,
Rwanda on top in East Africa,
there's that thing they call national guidance, something, where they take people at about 18 to 20, between 20.
Yeah, we had Chankwanzi.
Yes,
they say people are being
nationality, patriotism. Those are things that help. Akana kamaze S6 mukatwale Chankwanzi for about 6 months. Let them. Patriotism is one of the cures, but if we don't do that.
Well, clearly when you were saying that, it reminded me of how, when you're talking about how it's so unequal, and somebody was saying, that's
the thing.
So it's very,
it's just about balancing the boat.
Well, should we balance the corruption? Well, that's it for our discussion this morning. Mollen Kenyena is coming in to give you the sports updates right after. Yes, well, you know, she's developed a new interest. So yes, she'll be here to give you the sports updates.
We need to investigate where the court.
There is no corruption in that.
Sports.
There is no corruption in that.
What Ruben is doing, what is paying.
We will see you tomorrow. Have yourselves a very productive week, but also a wonderful month ahead, seeing as today is the very first day of this month. We will see you tomorrow. I am Philomena Mastiko. GMU Extra will be coming in right after Mollen. Good morning.
versus Niger at the Total Energies African Nations Championship Algeria 2022 semi-final number 1. Greetings from the Mouloud Hadfi Stadium in Oran. Good looking corner, big chance, and they've got it in! It is an early lead, Abdelawi! He's through again, Mahius! It looks good, and it's a third goal. Algeria totally dominating this. It's Mahius again. Belkhita, it's 4! Absolutely comprehensive dismantling so far. It's Algeria 4, Niger 0. Musa, that'll be on target. Husseini. And that's on target from the sub Karimu. From Mezian.
Well, that is a very, very interesting one, giving you the highlights of what happened last night. Very interesting game right there with Algeria and Niger. And I'm here thinking, what a game. 5-0, that was from the Algerian side. They did perform quite well. That was the semi-finals for them. It seemed different on the Algerian side, on the Niger side. I don't know whether they were aware that they were playing in the semi-finals, actually, and that is what brought them to a down deal of 0. Now, Algeria did progress to the finals of the 2022 CAF Championship of African Nations, that is the CHAN tournament, and the host nation of the ongoing tournament did secure its tickets, that is after triumphing Niger on 5-0 in the first semi-finals game, and that was yesterday. Now, also, you look at how Algeria dominated the contest from the start to finish. They made sure